Monday.
This is Mel Allen, and this is your station for the World Series.
WMCA, Strauss Communications in New York.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our World Series preview, the first of what might be as many as 7 World Series previews, or 4, or 5 or 6, depending on just how long the series goes. It's World Series time in baseball, the culmination of the 6-month baseball season. And this year's 1976 World Series, a repeat of 2 past World Series, the 1939 World Series, the 1961 World Series, the New York Yankees, and the Cincinnati Reds. World Series preview is being brought to you by Carte Blanche. Since no one credit card is accepted everywhere, you should have Carte Blanche, the credit card you need no matter what other credit cards you have. And by Emery Air Freight, the company that will handle your shipping and freight problems. Call Emery, the shortest distance between 2 points. Good afternoon, everyone. This is John Sterling along with Mel Allen, and this, Mel, the first of the World Series games. And I know that in doing this program before the World Series begins, I'm still caught up in the Yankee playoff. I know you're caught up in the Yankee playoff win over Kansas City as Chris Chambliss hit a home run in the 9th inning off Mark Littell. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. And you feel like you're just kind of drained. And if we feel that way, I guess my first question is, what do the Yankee ball players feel like? They've only had 1 day off between Chambliss' home run and the first pitch that'll be thrown today by Don Gullett of Cincinnati.
I think you're giving the best of it, John. I don't think they'd even have a full day off because they had to do some celebrating after that spectacular home run and then get ready to catch a plane for Cincinnati and take a little workout on that AstroTurf they have out at the new ballpark out there. My mind goes back, of course, you mentioned earlier, to the 39 World Series with Cincinnati, and I was just beginning in the business at that time, but the Yankees had such an overpowering team at that time, and they swept the Reds in 4 straight, but I don't expect them to do that this time. In fact, the Reds seem to have an edge this time in my mind, if they can get any kind of pitching at all, and I feel that Sparky Anderson has enough to go with all that power. He's got a star at every position.
Yeah, he's got power, speed, defense, guys who go from first to third, righty hitters, lefty hitters, a strong bench. He's got a whale of a ball club. I had not asked you about that before, and I'd like to ask you now. I know you started doing some baseball games in 1938. Whose games were you doing in 39?
We did the home games of the Giants and Yankees. That was actually the first year we did baseball on a daily basis. I was assigned by CBS, for whom I was a staff announcer, to do color on the 38 World Series. And I had never actually done baseball on the air. I'd done football while I was in law school. I think if you can do football and you're acquainted with other sports, you can do baseball. And they put me on, and I'd played baseball. I wasn't good enough to make the varsity, but I made my letter at college as student manager of sports, which included baseball, of course. You get the benefit of the same coaching the players do, even though you don't play. I played intramural sports. When I was in law school, I started to fill out physically, and I played a little semi-pro ball around and played second base and center field. But 1939 was the first year that the New York teams broadcast on a daily basis.
What station did you broadcast on?
CBS. Local, yes, the flagship station, WCBS. And
were those the call letters then?
WABC were their call letters at the time.
I thought so.
And they found out while they were feeding their network shows to the network, they didn't realize that a baseball game has no time limit to it.
Right.
And so after the 2-year contract was up and they found out they were losing money, they didn't renew. And so an independent station picked up the ball games, and they allowed me to freelance insofar as baseball was concerned, although I remained with the network until I went in the Army.
What was that, 1940?
No, it was I went in the Army in 1943.
Well,
But
what station picked up the games then?
WOR for a year, and then eventually it got over to WINS.
We're way off the track, but I never found these things out, and I'm going to find them out right now. Then we'll get back on the track in a moment. I hope
the Giants came over WMCA.
Yeah, I do remember as a kid when they were at MCA in the very late 40s. Tell me about you. When in '39 you started doing games. You said you did the Yankee and Giant home games. And you must have had another announcer you did them with.
That's right. We had. It was a strange thing. I had one so-called color announcer, or assistant announcer, is the proper word, because he would do the 2nd and 7th innings. That seemed to be traditional, because there was one sponsor that seemed to do most of the games around the United States, and that was General Mills, of course, for Wheaties. I hope our sponsor won't mind my mentioning that. But they couldn't break the New York market, and they hired William Slocum Sr. Bill Slocum Sr., one of the most respected sports writers and sports editors, away from his journalistic career, which was approaching its end, so to speak, and one of the finest men I've ever met in my life. And he represented them in all their dealings with all the ball clubs. But because of the high esteem in which he was held by the Giants, the Yankees, the Dodgers, he got them all together and proved to them that broadcasting would help their attendance and not hurt it.
Right.
And as a result, they gave in, and so 1939 was the first year that they ever broadcast games here in New York. So
was that considered a plum? How did you get that? You were just a young kid announcer at CBS. You were a low man on their staff.
Right. It was quite by accident. I was an understudy to Ted Husing. I'd been there a little while, a few months, and they knew I'd done some sports before, and that's how I got to CBS. I had planned to practice law, but here was an opportunity to come to New York, from Alabama, and to live in New York for 6 months. I figured, well, after that I can go back and get $10 a week as a clerk in the law office instead of $5.
Where were you living in New York? Sounds so great to me.
Well, I'll tell you the truth. The first thing, I went to the YMCA, because I belonged to the YMCA at college, but I suddenly, it didn't take me long to learn that there's a great deal of difference between YMCA in New York City than YMCA on a college campus. And I got out of there in a hurry, and I went over to a small hotel here in New York, and Ralph Edwards, who had preceded me by some 3-4 months, he was staying in a small hotel, or the hotel wasn't so small, but the rooms were, and we finally were able to sublet an apartment, and we pooled our resources, and we lived at a classy address, 100 West 55th Street.
Sounds
it was a
good.
classy address then,
2 blocks from here, too.
Right. And
isn't that amazing? Must have been completely different.
Right.
So you're 100 West 55th, CBS at 52nd and Madison, only a few blocks away. You're young, you're making money, you're an announcer in New York. New York.
You know how much I made? 45 bucks a week.
I know they didn't. But
right.
What do you think? What do you think 45 in 39 would be today? What is that?
Oh, I would say.
What does that approximate?
175, around 150, 175 hours a week.
Staff announcers didn't make big money in those days.
No, but one thing that CBS did, they would permit their announcers to branch out and do things on their own, As a matter of fact, suddenly I take an audition like a lot of other announcers, and I want an audition to do a nighttime show. And I got more money for doing that nighttime show than I did for working all week for CBS. All of a sudden, I was making over $100 a week. And in those days, that looked too good to have to give up, and go back to work for, say, $10 a week. So I stayed a little bit longer.
Anyway, you got a chance to do baseball, which is, as I say, kind of amazing. That was a plum, except I guess you have to tell your audience this. Baseball, as Mel said, had not been done on a day-by-day basis in New York. The glamour sport, I guess, was football, college football. Not pro football either, college football.
That's right.
That's a sport
Fordham was a major power. NYU was a major power.
But that was
Manhattan
a sport that the Husings and the McNamees and such made big money.
Right.
And so it wasn't easy to go out and dip into and find 87 guys who want to do baseball, because there weren't 87 guys who had done baseball. Now, they didn't know, though, that you were going to be a great Mel Allen. I mean, when you started doing baseball in '39, did your rhythm and your style evolve? I mean, no one ever sits down and says, "I'm going to do this." If you do, you're going to be a automaton on the air. You can't do that. You have to let it.
You can't
flow.
force yourself.
Right.
Well, I was an assistant, as a matter of fact. Wheaties made it well known that they were going to bring in men from other cities that had worked for them and knew their style, their approach, and we're going to bring them in from other cities. For example, Arch McDonald came up from Washington to be the chief announcer on both Yankee and Giant games. And then they brought a fellow in from St. Louis to be the assistant announcer. However, because of the fact that I was working for CBS and doing some sports, they allowed me to take an audition. And I took it, knowing full well that I had no chance to get the job. But after it was over, they liked the audition, and one day I get a call asking me would I be interested in going to Washington to replace Arch McDonald. And I agreed to it after going down to Washington and talking to the CBS outlet down there, on the basis that when the season was over, I would be allowed to come back to New York, because if I stayed in radio, New York was the place,
Right.
And if they didn't agree to it, then I wasn't going to do baseball, because otherwise I'd go back and practice law or stay in New York and stay in radio. Well, it was all set until one day before the season opened, the late Clark Griffith called someone upstairs at CBS and said the deal was off because Walter Johnson, whose career had come to its conclusion both as a player and manager, had just dropped by to say hello to Griff, as they called him. And they were chatting, and suddenly it occurred to Griff, here's one of the greatest stars of all time. What a wonderful thing it would be for him to do the broadcasting. And so he made the decision, called up and canceled the arrangements that we had made, and so I didn't go to Washington. Now, we had a full network show from Cooperstown in 1939. That was the first century, really, of baseball, pro baseball. When you check back, 1839 was the first year that there was pro baseball. And it was sort of like an all-star game. They had the biggest stars of both the National and American League there in Cooperstown. It was the opening, of the baseball museum there and all, the Hall of Fame. And I was assigned by CBS to go up there and handle all the ceremonies and also to broadcast the ball game. The head of the news department, Paul White, who's no longer with us, But he is the fellow that everybody follows. He set guidelines that all the newsmen today, the big news executives, follow. And he said to me, he said, you know, Mel, what would be a good idea? I said, what's that, Mr. White? He said, why don't you ask Arch if he'd like to go with you up to Cooperstown and work the game with you. You see, Arch was working for CBS Local, and I was with CBS, period, which meant local as well network. And unknown to me, something had happened, you see, with Arch's assistant. And that was the reason that Paul told me this, Paul White. So we went up and we did the ball game. They liked the way we worked together, as I found out later. And that was the way that I got the opportunity to do the Yankees and Giants games, because they wanted to make the switch on Arch's assistant. And so I always, as a matter of fact, you can say this on the air today, we couldn't a few years ago. He was doing a commercial one day. Arch had put him on, the inning was over, there's a fly ball to right field, I was saying so-and-so caught it, and the inning is over, no runs, no hits, no errors, nobody left on. An afternoon game. Before we go into the last of the third, all you ladies had gathered around the microphone. He was real coy, you know. He says, I want to talk to you for a moment about Obery soap. The slip of the tongue, you know. Well, today, if you and I were to do this sort of thing, and we have, we go on, we talk real fast about something else, leaving people wondering, did he say that or didn't he?
Right.
But instead, this chap burst out laughing. And he started all over again, made the same mistake. He did it 3 times. And that was what I
got to tell you something. A lot worse happened last night when I was doing those interviews on the phone.
Yeah.
But if someone objects to that, then they're a jerk.
That's a mob scene, and that. I've been through it, and I can imagine what you went through.
Well,
I was sitting upstairs waiting. You know, I said, give me the signal when John gets downstairs there. I knew you got down in a hurry, but trying to get through that
I couldn't get to the phone. Yeah. You know, I didn't ever tell you the story. We didn't have time last night. They held all the newspaper men out on both sides, and I had to get to the other side of the clubhouse. And there was a battle going on down there because they had to cart the champagne in. Lee McPhail and I were pressed up against each other. Here's the president of the American League. He couldn't get through to the clubhouse. It's a weird scene. Hey, they've got to improve on that a little bit. But I'm not going to go after the Yankees or Yankee Stadium or New York right now. I'm more interested in this story. And it's leading up to the 39 World Series. Did you... Now, I know that just because you did the games of a team that would be in the World Series, that didn't mean you would do the World Series. Did CBS have the World Series that year on radio, or did NBC?
Yes, I think in 1939 was the first year that the Gillette Cavalcade of Sports came into existence. And they could select anyone they wanted to. What a lot of people today are surprised about is that you go back to 1938, and when I was in school and all the networks did the World Series. And it was all sustaining. Can you imagine that? And the millions that are involved today in a relatively short time, period of time. In an individual's life, it's a long time.
Who broadcast the 39 series?
A fellow named France Laux, L-A-U-X, from St. Louis, the CBS station out there, and I.
You did it. I didn't know you broadcast it. Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. That was my first one that I did the play-by-play on. The very first I did the color on, you see, in 38.
Very good. Now, you did the games in New York. Did you do the games in Cincinnati, too?
Yes.
So you saw...
Oh, I was living high on the hog, as my good friend Red Barber used to say. You know, traveling and with all these major league ball players. You can imagine how I felt.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
At that year particularly, did you say to yourself... Now, you're starting as people here who are listening, unless the older ones, wouldn't know what a staff announcer is, but in live radio, they say there wasn't TV then, staff announcer was a very important guy because he got assigned to many different shows. You may be with a lot of hit shows or not, but you were still working. The shows could bomb. Staff announcers work forever.
That's right.
Talent didn't, but the staff announcers did. But did you then say to yourself during 39, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to do baseball? Did you know then you wanted to do it?
Oh, sure. As a matter of fact, I wanted to do sports even before I had gone into the office of the assistant to Paul White. His name is Ed Fitzgerald. And I said, sometimes when there's more than one sports event on a given day, I said, if you feel that you'd like to give me an opportunity to do a sports event, I'd love to. I said, I did sports while I was at college, and that's how I got here. And I've really loved sports, just like you do, John.
Oh,
I mean, you show it in your enthusiasm and all, and as well as your tremendous knowledgeability in everything that you do.
No,
I don't say that. It's not a pat on the back.
I know
I've
what
listened to a lot of guys, but
I wanted to find out in way back in 39, did you say to yourself one day when you're going up to the Polo Grounds or going up to the stadium, yeah, this is what I want to do? Let me, I'm sure no one but me is interested in this question. When you did the games in 1939, okay, summer of 39, and you were doing a game every day because one of them would be home.
Right. And if they were rained out at home, we would do by recreation the other team's game on the road. Okay, now, I have two Mel Allen stories I can tell you to bring back memories in your life. But when you were doing that, did you have to go to work as well at CBS Network as a staff announcer? Did they make you work other hours, or was that just your assignment doing the ball games for a local WCBS? No, since we didn't travel, you had to do other work as well. And I found myself taken off staff after a bit and made an understudy to Ted Husing and Bob Trout, and they were the two top men in the country. The one in sports and the other in public affairs or special events. I was involved in presidential campaigns and things of that kind. In fact, I was involved, I never will forget this, in Howard Hughes' Around the World flight. And I happened to get, well, I'm just trying to think, Floyd Bennett Field. And I was the first one to announce his arrival at Floyd Bennett Field, and of course CBS was happy about that because we had beaten, NBC and Mutual at that time. NBC had the red and blue network right at the end of that. But it was something. I do want to tell you just one quick thing. Do you know what I did in 38, like in the afternoons? See, I used to open up the network when I started, 6 o'clock in the morning. And that was all right because I used to get up just about that time anyway to make an 8 o'clock class at college, so that didn't bother me too much. But I used to get out there and just hoping that maybe something might happen someday. I'd sit in the back, let's say downstairs at the Yankee Stadium, and sort of quietly to myself, when there's not too many people around, and describe the game to myself. And when I think back on it, I think it's good practice because in doing it, you really are doing it.
Sure.
And I'm sure that must have helped me when they actually had the auditions.
Absolutely. Oh, you had to pass auditions, no, of course. Unlike the World Series before 38, this program is not sustaining.
Yeah, we need to.
We got to take care of a little business, and then we'll get back right after these messages from Carte Blanche and Emery Air Freight.
Next time you have an appetite for American food, go directly to Chris Cella's at 160 East 46th Street in New York and Carte Blanche it. Chris Cella's is one of the many great restaurants in New York where your Carte Blanche card will allow you to spoil, indulge, and treat yourself to the kind of food nobody can make at home. Dinner always tastes a little better when you have it with style, with your Carte Blanche card, because people know Carte Blanche denotes more than an average measure of distinction and taste. With a Carte Blanche card, you can travel with style, too. You can Carte Blanche your airline tickets, Carte Blanche your rented car, carte blanche your hotel bill, and even carte blanche a vacation tour through Cartan Tours. Keep your card with you wherever you go and carte blanche your way through over 250,000 doors across the country, including Crisp Cellas. Carte blanche it. You'll know you're going first class. So will everyone else.
Voice recorder. On. Oxygen masks. On.
You're listening to the sound of one of the world's great air forces.
Hydraulic systems. On and checked.
An air force with more planes at its disposal than Russia or even America.
Ground equipment. Clear.
An air force that flies more often and to more places than any airline in the world. Yet an air force that doesn't have a single plane to its name. It's Emory Air Freight. At Emory, instead of having a fleet of planes at our disposal, we have a fleet of airlines. For we reserve space on key flights of practically every airline carrying freight. And we use hundreds of offline commuter and charter planes where airline service is weak. We also have thousands of people, thousands of trucks, and hundreds of offices waiting for us on the ground.
Control, this is 463, ready for takeoff.
The next time you have a package to ship, don't just ship it with an air freight company or even a package-only airline. Ship it with an Air Force. Emory, the shortest distance between 2 points.
John Sterling and Mel Allen back on a World Series preview, and I hope that the people will forgive me my enormous interest in the career of Mel Allen. I find stories of old radio days great. I wish I'd been a live announcer. I wish I'd be a live announcer now. I wish I'd been a staff announcer during the live radio days with orchestras and plays and actors and actresses and live audiences and such, sponsors booths and all the things you see in those corny 1930 movies. I'm sure the times weren't as great as I think they were, but I think they were great. I want you to...
I even did soap operas.
I'm sure you did. You had to do
station
all that.
break. I never made a station break. Would you believe that till I got to the network? Because when I did football in college, I didn't work for a station. I happened to be signed by the sponsor to do it. And I knew nothing about broadcasting, really. Mm-hmm. And as I've always told people, the longer you stayed in it, the less you realize you knew about it.
Mel, before we get to Don Gullett and Cincinnati and the Yankees, I do want to tell you this, and you're going to find this kind of funny story. I guess this is in the late 40s, and I'm a little boy, is what I am, and I love the Yankees, and I love Mel Allen, and I came across, and every kid in the audience my age, I don't know if they have them anymore, but every kid in the audience my age, except they're not kids anymore if they're my age, will know what I'm talking about. There used to be a thing called a classic comic. It was like a half step up from trashy comics, I guess. But you could read Ivanhoe, you could read whatever. Sometimes do a book report on a classic comic. There was a classic comic of Mel Allen. Did you know that? And in the classic comic on your life, it had you on the campus of University of Alabama at Birmingham, and you were a law student. So they stuck pretty close to it. And someone came up and said, Mel, and those characters going on page by page, chart by chart. Well, Mel, the Joe got sick, and they want you to fill in on the ball game tomorrow afternoon, the football game tomorrow afternoon. You said, well, there's some memory I've got for trivia, for nonsense, right? And you said, well, yes, let's say I've got to learn the numbers, and then I'll be okay. And now, did that ever happen? Is that how you did your first football game? I know that can't be a true story.
Well, that particular story isn't true, but I did learn early on, of course, that you had to learn the names to go with the numbers. The way I got started in this thing, sports announcers weren't, very plentiful when I was going to law school, and the man who was doing the university's games left to take a job in another city some 10 days before the season was to open. So everybody was frantic. They were looking for somebody who could do a football game. Among my duties as student manager of athletics was also handling the public address system. So among the people they called was the head football coach at Alabama, the late Frank Thomas, who had gone to Notre Dame, coached Bear Bryant and Don Hudson, among others. And so Tommy gave him my name because he figured, handling a public address system was tantamount to broadcasting. So they gave me an audition. Well, I knew what the word audition meant, but I didn't know what it meant in relationship to broadcasting. So I asked them. They said, well, just got some play-by-play of the last couple of minutes of some football game and recreated. And I said, what do you mean recreated? Well, you know, make out as if you were watching the game and make it sound as if it's happening now. And so I looked up in the files, and Alabama had played a Rose Bowl game against Stanford. It wound up in a 7-7 tie, and they had scored in the last 2 minutes. So I took the play-by-play down. So-and-so off right tackle for 3 yards. So-and-so up the middle for 4 yards. You know, 3rd down and 4 to go, etc. And I went ahead and recreated the last 2 minutes and did a little filler. In other words, I'd say now the team's back into the huddle, and the defense, Stanford's playing a prevent defense, or, you know, you throw that stuff in. And when it was all over anyway, I won the audition. And to show you how frantic they were, and I don't mean this as a gag, I found out I was the only one that took the audition. And I got $5 for each game. But anyway, I went up to do the first ball game. The opening game of the year, I knew the university's team by sight. It suddenly hit me. I said, I don't know the other team, but I got their roster and the jersey numbers, and I memorized the names to go with the jersey numbers. So I didn't even have spotters. I just went up there all by myself and did the ball game.
And I bet you did a great job. Of course, what people don't realize is that Mel's had this voice all his life, and so he must have sounded just great.
It covers up a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, no question about it. No question about it. Listen, we're going to talk a little bit about this first series game. I started out making a point, and with Mel's great stories that I've wanted to listen to, it's taken about a half hour to make that point. The point I'm going to make, ladies and gentlemen, is that here's the third series between the Yankees and the Cincinnati Reds. 39, the Yanks swept them in 4. That's the Yanks of DiMaggio and King Kong Keller, and Keller knocking Ernie Lombardi down and out for a moment at home plate. The Yankees beat the Reds up. Again, Mel Allen did the play-by-play. In 1961, the Yankees won in 5 games then. The Yankees had an enormous series with a bat. Johnny Blanchard became a star of that series. Berra, Maris, Howard, Hector Lopez. And now only the names change. Baseball stays the same, only the names change. It's 1976. It's not 39, but it's the Yankees and the Cincinnati Reds. It is Don Gullett against one of 2 or 3 pitchers the Yankees might name, although I know that Billy Martin is leaning to Doc Ellis, but it could be Doyle Alexander, it could be Ken Holtzman. And we're going to talk with Mel, kind of update you about the Yanks and Cincinnati as they'll face each other in just a short time from now. World Series preview being brought to you by Carte Blanche and Emery Air Freight.
Next time you have an appetite for continental food, go directly to Keen's English Chop House at 73 West 36th Street in New York and carte blanche it. Keen's Chop House is one of many great restaurants in New York where your carte blanche card will allow you to spoil, indulge, and treat yourself to the kind of food nobody can make at home. Dinner always tastes a little better when you have it with style with your carte blanche card. Because people know carte blanche denotes more than an average measure of distinction and taste. With a carte blanche card, you can travel with style, too. You can carte blanche your airline tickets, carte blanche your rented car, carte blanche your hotel bill, and even carte blanche a vacation tour through Cartan Tours. Keep your card with you wherever you go and carte blanche your way through over 250,000 doors across the country, including Keen's English Chop House. Carte blanche it. You'll know you're going first class. So will everybody else.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the friendly skies of United. This is Flight 917 to Chicago, and we should arrive on schedule.
Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Eastern Airlines, the airline that has the right time and the right place for you. This is Flight 15 to Miami, and
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TWA Flight 463 to Indianapolis. We'll be flying at an altitude of about 35,000 feet.
At Emery Air Freight, instead of having a fleet of planes at our command, we have a fleet of airlines, because Emery reserves space on key flights of practically every airline that carries freight. What's more, we use hundreds of offline commuter and charter planes where airline service is weak or non-existent. So when you ship a package with Emery, it can go anywhere the big airlines can go, and a lot of places they can't go.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. Get yourself up, go Ozark. And this Ozark flight will be going to Waterloo, Iowa.
Emery Air Freight, the shortest distance between 2 points.
Now, the first question, Mel, is the age-old question. Which team has it better? Which team has the, if you pardon this cliche word, the momentum? Cincinnati blew Philadelphia out in 3 games. They've rested comfortably since Tuesday. They've had Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off. Gullett hasn't pitched in a week. He really is a good pitcher. When Gullett is healthy, he's got an arm. He can throw the ball through that wall over there. The Yankees drained from their 9th inning Chris Chambliss home run victory over Kansas City in the 5th and final game after they had blown a 3-0 lead after they had battled back from a 2-run deficit. They might start Doc Ellis today. He's had 3 days of rest. They might go with Ken Holtzman or Doyle Alexander, neither of whom pitched in the Kansas City series. Which team is readier for this game?
Well, obviously, Cincinnati, with the rest that they've had, and I haven't paid this much attention to it in reading the papers. I haven't seen anything about how much they've worked out. They probably worked out a little enough to stay loose, taking some batting practice. They would be rested. On the other hand, the Yankees would still have the drive that goes with the momentum of coming right down to the wire as they did and finishing so spectacularly, and they could be drained emotionally for a while, but I don't think that would take too much out of them. I think it would really result in their having a lift as they moved into Cincinnati. Now, this team is a combination of many spectacular trades made by Gabe Paul. It's not a team that has won as frequently as many of the teams that I had the privilege of watching win pennants, so that they may be affected by the pressure of facing the big red machine. And after all, they know what a ball player Pete Rose is, and Joe Morgan, the MVP last year, and a possible MVP again this year. In fact, you go right down that lineup, every guy is a star. All around the infield, Perez and Concepcion, and you got Geronimo. Everybody is a star.
They got some team. They really do.
However, Billy Martin, I believe, will handle one situation. I don't think the Yankees are going to be overawed. They may be overpowered, but I don't think they'll be overawed.
No, and I think it's a good thing that the Yanks are going to the series now. Thursday night, and the game is over at midnight. They don't get out of the stadium till 2 o'clock. I know, because I didn't leave the dressing room till 1:30. And the guys hadn't even started getting dressed. Not even started.
Right.
I mean, Roy White and Lyle and Munson, they were still in their baseball underwear. And
they'll get a good night
spent.
And they will have gotten a good night's sleep last night.
Right. And so they'll get a good night's sleep in Cincinnati and be ready to play today. And I think that kind of turf is going to help the Mickey Rivers and the Thurman Munsons and the Roy Whites. And I'd say what I do believe, and this doesn't take any genius to say it. In fact, if you believed otherwise, you might need some help. I think there's going to be an awful lot of runs scored in this series.
Well, there could be. The only thing that bothers me, and doesn't bother me, I mean, the only thing that I might disagree with you on is this. If the Yankee pitchers pitch to their respective abilities, they would have an edge over Cincinnati. I don't care how powerful the team is. If you've got the pitching, you've got the edge on them. I know, as I've said before, as you and I have talked, Joe McCarthy played it that way. Casey Stengel played it that way. And, in fact, the people who make a little wager here and there, the odds are set on the pitchers.
Well, I think that favors the Yankees. By the way, I don't feel, and I've said so on the air since the game was over, that I don't feel, in fact, I'm going to pick the Yankees, and I think Cincinnati is mouthing off a little too much, a little too soon. And, I was in Baltimore when the Dodgers were picking 4 straight over the Orioles, and the Orioles beat them 4 straight because their pitching was unbelievable, and the Dodgers had a real banjo-hitting team. They had great pitching themselves, but they had a banjo-hitting team. But I just think there's going to be a lot of runs scored, and I think it's going to be a 6 or 7 game series, and I think the series is going to be very much like last year's, a great series of the Reds and the Red Sox. And I think baseball, as Bob Fischel said on that post-game show that we had last night, is down the tunnel. A horse drained Bob Fischel. He said, that this is baseball's finest hour. Last year's World Series, this year's American League Championship. You can't beat it. It has shown baseball to be the greatest game in the world, and it's caught people up who, frankly, aren't baseball fans. Here at the radio station, Long John Neville and Candy Jones and Barry Gray were absolutely caught up in that game last night. We will return with a closing comment right after these closing messages from our sponsors, Carte Blanche and Emery Air Freight.
Next time you have an appetite for American food, go directly to U.S. Steakhouse at 120 West 51st Street in New York and Carte Blanche it. U.S. Steakhouse is one of many great restaurants in New York where your Carte Blanche card will allow you to spoil, indulge, and treat yourself to the kind of food nobody can make at home. Dinner always tastes a little better when you have it with style with your Carte Blanche card, because people know Carte Blanche denotes more than an average measure of distinction and taste. With a Carte Blanche card, you can travel with style, too. You can Carte Blanche your airline tickets, Carte Blanche your rented car, Carte Blanche your hotel bill, and even Carte Blanche a vacation tour through Cartan Tours. Keep your card with you wherever you go, and Carte Blanche your way through over 250,000 doors across the country, including U.S. Steakhouse. Carte Blanche it. You'll know you're going first class. So will everyone else.
Have you ever gone to the airport to get your package on a plane?
Taxi! The airport, please.
I don't know what it is about this cab, but it just refuses to go to the airport at rush hour. Probably afraid of planes.
Taxi!
When you finally get there, you're almost sorry you did.
Could either of you gentlemen tell me where the World International counter is?
Sure, it's right over that way.
No, Charlie, it's over that way.
And when you get to where you're going, you have to be lucky to get your package to where it's going.
Hi, I'd like to get this package on your next plane to Fargo, North Dakota, please. And why are you shaking your head?
See that plane taking off?
Yeah.
That was our next plane to Fargo, North Dakota.
There's an easier way. Call Emery. We'll pick your package up and rush it to the airport. And instead of your package waiting for a plane, chances are you'll find a plane waiting for your package. You'll also find that Emery goes to more places both here and abroad than any other air freight company.
Hello, Emery? Help.
Emery Air Freight, the shortest distance between 2 points.
John Sterling and Mel Allen back in just a short time from now. The action at Riverfront Stadium. Mel, artificial turf, Cincinnati Reds, Don Gullett, probably against Doc Ellis, although I think Billy Martin has the right to make a change and go with either Holtzman or Alexander and probably come back with Hunter tomorrow.
I think he will bypass Hunter and give him that extra day's rest. Now, unless something is wrong with Holtzman, he didn't even get into the playoffs, nor Alexander. And Billy may have had something in the back of his mind. Alexander is the kind of a pitcher, and so is Doc Ellis, having been in the National League, and he knows the Reds. And I think the Reds primarily are a right-handed hitting team, and starting right-hander, I think, would be the best thing for New York.
Well, he's got 4 starting right-handers, in Hunter and Alexander and Figueroa and Ellis, and they're going to see a lot of duty. So will the bullpen of Lyle, Jackson, and Tidrow, and I would imagine Kenny Holtzman will. I think you'll see. I think it's going to be very much like that Oakland A's Cincinnati Red series, where every game sees 4, 5, 6 pitchers aside. Mel will be on right after the game to discuss it with you. And we'll see you tomorrow evening now, Mel. It's an evening game, so we'll see you tomorrow evening, Sunday evening, with our World Series preview before the second Yankee-Cincinnati game. This first World Series preview has been brought to you by Carte Blanche and Emery Air Freight. Carte Blanche, the credit card you need no matter what other credit cards you have. And Emery Air Freight, the company that will handle your shipping and freight problems. Call Emery. It is the shortest distance between 2 points. For Mel Allen, this is John Sterling. Have a good day. Stay tuned for World Series Baseball.
WMCA.